guys rock. Thanks for all the love. Thanks, Reverend Herzig. Good evening. Thank you to every person that has joined us here tonight to celebrate this special milestone for Isaac. I have the honor of sharing just a small snippet of my story and about the ways in which God has provided for me in this present season of my life. I hope that through this you're encouraged, and I hope that it also causes you to marvel at the ways in which God's hand of provision is working in your own life, in ways that are both seen and unseen. So I'm just going to start off with my story. I remember the first time I discovered what hunger felt like. I think I was about 7 years old, and my mom, siblings, and I were piled into the back of our station wagon, which was our home at the time. We were waiting for my dad to get off of work, and when I asked my mom for food because I was starving, or apparently when you're 7, you're like always starving, but I never forgot the stench that came from the container that she offered me, the only thing that she could offer me at that time, from my father's leftover lunch. And I remember feeling so confused in that moment and never being able to let go of the confusion that I felt in that particular moment. So in the 2nd grade, my family hit rock bottom financially. After being evicted from our apartment at the time, we moved into a motel in Westminster, California, so towards Orange County a little bit more. And it's fascinating to me how much of an impact that made on me, even at such an early age. I am the daughter of 2 Filipino immigrants. My mother came to America from the Philippines after completing nursing school, and then she met my dad in a grocery store in San Diego, California. My parents are 2 really different people in every sense of the word, but I think one of the biggest differences is how they grew up as far as socioeconomic status. So my mom, like I said, is a nurse, and she came from a more affluent family. My dad was from a more working class background, and he was more of a man of humble beginnings sort of guy. They came together to become one, and I wish I could say it was happily ever after that, but lots of complexities that come with that. My childhood was one of constant mobility. I was moving around a lot. By the time I was 10 years old, I attended 5 different elementary schools, so needless to say, we moved around quite a bit. And to this day, it's hard for me to even keep track of all the different names of the schools that I attended, just because, by the 4th or 5th one, it was just a blur. And after that 3rd school, I became the shy girl in class who is more accustomed to being invisible, not connecting with people, because I knew I was going to move anyways, so I didn't see a point in that. I was a child familiar with staying at school hours after the last bell rang, just because my parents couldn't afford childcare. In the 4th grade, something significant happened. I was identified as gifted and talented. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education, but I was identified as gifted and talented when I was about 10, 11 years old, and I remember my 4th grade teacher had a huge impact on me. Her name was Sumit Singh. She was this petite Indian woman, and I don't know if she could tell that it was hard at home or what, but she would allow me to stay in her classroom after school hours. She would give me different projects. She would help me tidy up the classroom, and there was something so significant about that, of having a place that felt safe and having a place that felt like home, even outside of what home was for me at the time. I loved Mrs. Singh, and I loved being in that classroom. So since 4th grade, there's so much that has happened in my life, but I'm going to fast forward us just a little bit to the end of my senior year of high school, where after lots of prayer and research, I decided that I wanted to attend Paule University in La Mirada, California. And at that time, although we seemed to be better off financially, my family was able to purchase a home in Corona at that time. College was still out of the equation, especially a private Christian college in Southern California like Biola. So I remember in high school, while most of my classmates were celebrating with each other, staying up to date with the latest college acceptances. I was trying to email all my admissions counselors, asking them for every waiver I could get, asking them what financial aid was, what was this thing called FAFSA, all of these things that were so foreign to me. But long story short, Paule did end up working out for me. And college for me was a time of stepping way out of my comfort zone, a time of deep healing, and literally trusting God to provide in every single area of my life. And God has done that. I'm sure that most of you know that a private Christian education isn't the most wallet-friendly thing, but I got through it, and I don't know if there's a picture that we can show it. But on May 27th, 2016, a few months ago, I did graduate with my bachelor's in sociology. It's okay if the picture doesn't show up, but if it does, there might be a picture that shows up soon. It's alright. On May 28th, 2016, literally less than 24 hours later, after crossing that stage, I found myself in the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California, which has been home for me since then. I didn't have a car when I moved out here, and just a couple months before that, I actually had no idea where I was going to live. But I did know two things. I knew that I was going to be an intern with Isaac, and I knew where I was going to be placed at West Angeles Church of God in Christ, which Elder Owens is here in the audience tonight. So shout out to him. But yeah, that was the extent of what I knew was next for me after graduating. But with the help of Reverend Hertig, I stayed for free with a couple named Dave and Marilyn Sell in Mount Washington. They needed a home sitter for the months that they were traveling, and it truly couldn't have worked out more perfectly than the way that it did. In that time, that family has truly become like family to me, and Dave and Marilyn would always joke around that I was their granddaughter, although we look nothing alike. For June and most of July, I still didn't have a car, but people were literally giving me their cars to drive. Janelle, drive my car. Janelle, have it for a month. Give it back to me at the end of the month. Things are crazily happening, and things that aren't normal occurrences, like people giving you their cars to drive for a month. So these are people like Emily Inaba and Dave Sell, which both of them aren't here tonight, but I deeply, deeply was touched by that. At the end of July, I finally purchased a car from a fellow Biola student who was actually just scrolling through our Biola Classifieds page one day, and he just happened to come across an ad that I posted. At this point, I was desperate, and I posted something like, looking for a car that will get me from point A to point B for $1,500. It was pretty specific, but this guy messaged me, and I ended up buying his car for $1,500, and it gets me from point A to point B, so that's really nice. And funny, because he originally was on there to sell his ukulele, and then he figured he'd reach out to me since he'd already been thinking about selling his car for a while, and he just never got around to posting the ad yet. So I don't know what you call that other than provision, right?
Yeah, all right.
I raised support to purchase the car, which was a way of asking for help that I have never done before. And I think especially in Asian American culture, with face saving and shame and all of these unique aspects, that was hard, and my parents were confused why I was doing that. Extended family were on Facebook and wondering what this thing called GoFundMe was, no idea. So at this time, I do want to acknowledge those who generously gave towards my car fund. So thank you to Gavin Sweeney, my Ruby Women mentor from Biola, Christy Kirkpatrick, Angelica Mikhail, who is also here with us in the audience. Thank you, Angelica. My little brother, Vincent, and a special thank you to Isaac and to Reverend Hertig. So if there's one thing that I'm learning in this season of my life, it's that God's provision often does not come on our own timeline. And nor does it come as formulaically A plus B equals C, as you would like it to. It would be super awesome and so convenient if it happened that way. But most of the time it doesn't. So that's terrifying at times, right? But I think depending on how you look at it, it can also be a beautiful and liberating truth. One of my dearest mentors, Dr. Rebecca Hong, once told me that I am an outlier to what society would predict for someone coming from my social location. And I'm finding that's often the case for many people who are faced with what seem to be insurmountable challenges from early on in life. Whomever God uses greatly, God must first wound deeply, according to Oswald Chambers, and I'm finding that to be very true. Working with Reverend Hertig and Isaac has also been a divinely orchestrated situation. In college, I would often find myself as the only Asian American female in predominantly African American spaces, and I never quite knew what to do with that and why that kept happening at such a great frequency in my life. I never knew what to do navigating trying to be a voice and an ally in those spaces, but also acknowledging that I would never ever understand the Black experience in America. And I would never have to face some complex and harsh realities as an Asian American woman. And I didn't know what to do with that. So learning from and being mentored by Reverend Hertig this year has empowered me and it's encouraged me in this journey of navigating spaces that continue to move me way past my comfort zone. It's been so life-giving to know that I'm not alone in this journey, and I'm so grateful for the fact that I can glean from the wisdom of trailblazers like her who have gone before me. I'm so appreciative of my time as an intern at West Angeles, where I was immediately embraced as part of the West A family. Elder Owens would meet with me each week, and he would allow me the space to ask really hard questions that I was processing through, especially during this summer in a time when news headlines are filled about these fatal shootings, senseless killings of African American men like Alton Sterling and Philando Castile that sent shockwaves throughout our nation. In one of my reflections after a Wednesday night youth group service, I wrote, "I'd feel like a fraud if I didn't address the emotions heavy in my heart while interning at an African American church like West Angeles." As I walked into youth group tonight, my heart broke as I looked around me and realized that with the current state of violence and discrimination in America today, that this could happen to any of these youth standing before me in this room. It hurts me that many of my African American brothers and sisters are living a completely different narrative than me, one in which they must always be prepared with the possibility of their innocent lives being taken away by law enforcement at any time. This thought just sickens me. My heart weeps for them and with them. I want to show up. As our nation finds itself in the thick of divided racial lines and as blatant, overt racism becomes more and more normalized, I want to stand in the gap and do something about it. I'm willing to do this no matter the cost. So I'm so grateful for people like Elder Owens, like Reverend Hertig, who sat with me in this fog of confusion that I felt, where I don't know was an okay answer in that season. So in addition to working as Isaac's communications coordinator, I recently started working as the parish administrator at Goldline Church, which a few are here today. And Goldline is a new church plant in Northeast LA, Highland Park specifically. And in a neighborhood that often seems divided along ethnic and socioeconomic lines, it seeks to be a community where everyone is welcome at the table, power is shared, and each person's gifts, story, and culture are celebrated. And if you know what I'm interested in and where my passions lie, you would know that that is also a divinely orchestrated fit. My ultimate goal in life is to bring the hope of Christ to young women who can't bring themselves to see their worth and value in Christ. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because that young woman is me. It's me on a daily basis. It's me as I choose to exchange the filth that the world says about me and tries to define me in for a greater calling. It's me on the days that I question where Christ is, where I can literally feel the ground beneath me shaking. I desire to help empower young women of color from lower socioeconomic backgrounds because in so doing, I'm able to make a little more sense of my own journey and my own story. I feel a strong calling to stay in Los Angeles, which is fantastic because this is where God has me for now. I'm hoping it'll stay that way for a while. Because I see the need for transformation in present-day systems of structural inequality. And I think we need to talk about these things. So I'm not entirely sure what my desire to empower young women will tangibly look like over the course of these next few years, but I'm following the Lord step by step and moment by moment. And I'm encouraged to always be reminded through situations like this, even through moments like this, that God is Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who will provide, whether financially or emotionally, relationally, in all the complex ways that we need it as complex human beings, the Lord will provide. So thank you for stepping into my story and listening. It means a lot to me. Thanks.